Hey guys, and welcome back to Modelling Misfit. This diorama took me around 4 months to complete, along with a boatload of stress, and you'll find out why in a bit. Like with all the models, I start just by building as the instructions say, but I'ma be honest, I really could not be arsed with these tiny photo etch bits, so I just didn't. But apart from that, I really enjoyed making this model, especially as you really don't see the Sunderland very often, especially in this scale. I then built the anchor, which in the completed model is completely sealed away and invisible. I painted the inside black and added the windows. And then sealed all the internal pieces in their eternal tomb. I made up the guns and gave them a coat of gunmetal grey. Along with the waste guns that didn't end up surviving the building process. I then mounted the flaps, which I was careful to make sure they were in the landing position. And after attaching the wings, I saw I broke off the barrel of the front gun. Piss. I was pleasantly surprised with the amount of detail in these engines. Don't see it in a lot with models like these. Then I took some string and separated it up into the individual strands so that I could make the cables for the wingtip floats. I then added well, that's gone forever. After masking up all the windows and open holes, I took it for a priming. And only now I've realised that the wheels are only meant for the decommissioned version of the plane. After the white dried, I marked up where the dark sea blue was going to go and one final layer of white to help stop bleed-throughs. I then got this box of men from my local hobby shop and picked out the ones that looked best to be on a life raft. Along with some modification, I'm quite happy with how they turned out. I had a very old model ship and cannibalised the life rafts from that. With these inflatables being too small, I switched to the wooden ones, which are still a bit too small, but better, so fuck it. My idea for this diorama is this Sunderland has been sent out to search for a ship that Naval Command have lost communication with. They were flying along and ended up coming across a lot of wreckage but no bodies, which is unusual. Even when most people were captured alive, there was always at least some bodies in the water. They were finally able to spot 2 life rafts with sailors waving their arms frantically. they find a clear spot of water and line up to land. All the while the survivors are getting more and more frantic. The aircrew chalks it down to the stress of being sunk. As they land, they start to hear the sailors' voices cutting through the engine noise, but they must be mishearing them. They're screaming, "Leave! Take off! Get out of there!" Little did they know, it wasn't the Germans who sunk the ship, and whatever it was that did had been using the life rafts as bait, waiting for the bigger target. Taking the blue tack off these windows was one of the most satisfying things. After attaching the final windows, I started doing the panel lining and weathering. As with ships, it was very rare they would dry dock these planes and take all the algae off, but with these planes being white, it's much easier to notice. Now onto the monster. I bought this clay because it says oven bake on the front. Starting with a foundation of tinfoil, I start to make up this first one, with it looking more like an anglerfish in my head, creating multiple eyes, some gills and teeth. Then after baking, it came out like this, all cracked and horrible, so yeah, time to start again. This one is actually the third attempt, and I got the body to look alright, so I started to build up what would eventually be the mouth and added some predator looking pincer doohickeys and baked it. And that is when I learned that when this product says oven bake, it's a bad translation from Spanish, and my kitchen oven doesn't get to 900 degrees Celsius, so I had to go get some new clay. I know at the moment it looks like a gay man's turd after Pride, so I ended up calling him Mason, for no reason at all. I used my clay tools to add some lips and different marks and folds on the body to give it a more leathery flesh look. Now onto the tentacles. I start with noodly tinfoil, wrapping it in clay, and after making the grabby bit of them, I take a bunch of clay dots and use the ball stylus to make the suckers and more leathery texture. Now to do all that 4 more times. After doing that, I drill some holes for the teeth and take all of that for a prime. After priming, I started to paint the mouth, going for a bioluminescence, which won't be visible later, but you know, I tried. Then painting the tentacles, I went for brown for the grabby area and filled the holes of the suckers with white. Filling the mouth with teeth took ages, and most of the teeth broke as I was putting them in anyway, which was lovely. Then a dry brushing of blue and a tiny bit of whites for some added contrast. And now to put it all together. I got this storage container which I'd cut holes in to fit for the plane. And after super gluing Mason, I mixed up the resin and poured it in. Now this is where I have to do some explaining of what happened next, because I was panicking too much to actually film it. After I poured the resin in, I start lining up the plane, but that's when I started to notice a lot of steam coming from the resin, like a lot. I put my hand onto the side of the thin plastic container and it was extremely hot, like I could only touch it for a second or two hot. Which is when I started panicking that it was going to melt through and ruin my carpet. But then after about 30 minutes, I realised all the sides of it were curing already. But where I left Mason without clay on the bottom, all the air that was trapped inside was getting hotter and expanding, leading to a massive buildup of air inside the resin, which means while it was still hot and still expanding, at any moment the cured resin could burst, throwing scalding hot resin all over my living room, causing third-degree burns and ruining anything it touched. Essentially meaning I had created a napalm bomb just waiting to go off in the middle of my living room. Luckily it never did, and I was left with this. I seriously contemplated just binning it, but thought, fuck it, I've come this far. So in order to get the plane into the resin, I needed to be very delicate. After carving out the divot, I used an epoxy syringe to make sure that the plane and life rafts were forever embedded, and then using Vallejo water texture, I added some waves, and after dry brushing some white onto the peaks of the waves, I called it good.